Celestial Viscera. Part 3. The Cosmic Viscera. 1. Fluid Dynamics. The overload did not end in silence. It dissolved into flow. Anya's consciousness, shattered into a million sensing shards, was now carried on a current. It was the fundamental truth beneath all the noise. Everything pours. Blood in the artery, traffic on the expressway, people in the crosswalk, water in the gutters after a rain. The wind was a river of air. Time itself was a relentless one-way tide. She was no longer a thing separate from the movement, but a part of the movement itself. The rigid structures of the city were just temporary obstructions in this greater, eternal pour. The fight was over. She had ceased being a rock in the stream and had become the stream. 2. Chromatophore Carnival. As flow, she perceived the world not as shape, but as shade and hue. The city was a great cephalopod, communicating in a language of color. A stoplight was not a command, but a slow, rhythmic beat of red, amber, green, a conversation between order and release. The neon signs of the clinic and the mall were not advertisements, but brilliant, desperate flares in the mating dance of commerce. The shift from day to night was not a transition of light, but a profound change in the skin of the world, from the blue of hope to the deep indigo of dreams. She felt the emotional weather of the crowds as shifts in saturation and warmth. It was a carnival, a continuous, righteous display of expression without a single spoken word. 3. Breathing in time with the walls. The flow began to slow, to settle. She found herself pulled into a single point of awareness again, but the boundaries were different. She was in her apartment, but she was also of it. The slow, deep expansion of her lungs matched the subtle creak of the building's joints as the night cooled. The rush of blood in her ears was the sound of water moving through pipes deep in the walls. When a truck passed on the street below, the vibration traveled up the foundations and into her teeth. There was no longer an inside and an outside. The membrane was gone, replaced by a perfect porous integration. She was a cell in a vast brick and steel body, breathing its slow mineral breath. 4. Shedding a skin of numbers. This new unity brought a final profound release. The last vestiges of her quantified self slowed away. The need to measure her worth, her success, her happiness, her minutes, her likes, it all fell off in a single silent sheet. It was the final layer of the external mechanism to be discarded. The weight of her bank account, her social score, her age, her future projections. It was all a dry, suffocating skin she had been carrying. Letting it go was not an act of loss, but of molting. What remained was raw, new, and terrifyingly analog, a being of pure experience, unrated, untracked, and free. 5. Heartbeat of a giant. And then she felt the drum. It was not a sound, but a deep, subsonic presence that moved through everything. It was in the vibration of the earth under the city, and the slow turn of the planet, and the distant silent flare of stars. It was the rhythm behind the fluid dynamics, the meter of the chromatophore carnival. This was the heartbeat of a giant. Her own heart, the tender muscle she had once mapped, was now just a local tiny echo of this vast primordial cadence. She was not a cell in a building, but a cell in a living cosmos. The giant was not a god, it was simply the sum of all that is, and it had a beat. 6. 1,000 thoughts at once. Attuned to the giant's rhythm, her perception expanded into a state of total, simultaneous reception. She did not think 1,000 thoughts, she was 1,000 thoughts at once. The ambition of the man in the penthouse above was a sharp, clear note. The despair of the woman in the subway below was a low, resonant tone. The simple joy of a plant finding light through a crack in the pavement was a delicate, rising chord. She heard the city not as noise, but as a complex, living symphony. Every living thing was an instrument in this orchestra, playing its unique part in a breathtaking, real-time composition. It was the pattern recognition without the fear. The overload transformed into harmony. 7. Peak brightness, whiteout. The symphony swelled, each note tightening, rising in pitch and intensity. The colors of the world brightened, bleaching toward a supreme burning clarity. The individual instruments of the 1,000 thoughts began to merge, their distinct melodies folding into one another, becoming a single rising tone. The light intensified, the sound tightened, the feeling crescendoed, all of it aiming toward a single, unbearable point. It arrived. Not with a sound, but with the absence of all possible sound. Not with a color, but with the source of all color. A perfect, silent, blinding whiteness. The aperture from the sonic alchemy had not been a door, but a preview. This was the main event, the individual, the external, the internal, the cosmic. All distinctions were vaporized in this unity. The self was not dissolved, it was subsumed. It was the end of perception, because there was nothing left separate to perceive. Only the is. 8. Solar plexus. From the heart of the absolute whiteness, a single point of warmth ignited. It was a small, dense yellow star. It was not the giant's heartbeat, but her own. It lived in the core of her, just below the ribs, the solar plexus, the center of personal power. The whiteout receded, not as a fade, but as a contraction into the singular tiny sun. The cosmic vastness was not gone. It was now contained within this localized, personal star. She was a universe, and this was her center. She did not need to listen for the giant's rhythm anymore. She could generate her own. The gold the alchemist sought was not in the lead of the world, but in the fire at the center of the self. 9. The Kybalion. Principles drifted into her awareness, not as words, but as known truths. They were the rules of this new reality. As above, so below. The street reflects the sky. As within, so without. The city is my body. Nothing rests. Everything moves in the great pour. Everything is dual. Every pain contains its pleasure. Every truth is but half true. Every face is a mask for another. Cause and effect are a single river flowing in both directions. Gender is in everything. The masculine wall gives way to the feminine window. This was the operating manual for the universe, decoded not by a mind but by a soul. It was the law written in the language of life itself. The understanding was total, and it required no belief, only recognition. 10. Sylvia Plath's suicide. And then she remembered the body. The cosmic principles, the personal sun, the flowing harmony, they all crashed against the simple, brutal fact of the physical. The warmth in her solar plexus met the cold of the linoleum floor against her cheek. The glorious symphony of the city was for everyone else just Tuesday night. The Kybalion's truths were beautiful, but they didn't stop the slow chemical ache of despair in the tissues. They didn't fill the hollow where a memory used to be. She had touched the infinite. She had become one with the giant. She had held the source of all light in her hands. And now she had to stand up. She had to open the oven and find it empty. She had to put her head in that oven not to die, but to live, to breathe in the mundane, terrible truth of the everyday. The ultimate, final rebellion was not against the world, but for it. To choose, after tasting divinity, the bitter, tangible, and utterly human reality of another day. The triumph was not in the ascent, but in the return. The victory was in the failure to escape. The celestial visit was over. Only the Viscera remained. Thank you.